He was meant to wield a holy sword, but he wished to obtain a wooden sword with the ability to accelerate plant growth. This tool can grow food that has various effects on those who consume it. It can replenish drained mana, enhance magical abilities, and refresh a tired body. Not only that, his own body also has a restorative effect on others. He can also summon woodmen as his servants. But before I spoil the fun, let's move on to the story. In the Kingdom of Kren's royal castle, St. Veselika Grand Cathedral, the Divine Blessing Ceremony is being held. It was an annual national tradition, and the now 15 years old Veil Orland is here to receive the item bestowed to him. Veil nervously followed behind as his name was called, causing a stir within the other participants. Being the son of one of the most elite knight families, the prestigious Orland family, Veil might just be the real deal. Since he was expected to join the Knight Order, he was hoping to receive the Divine Sword. Veil closed his eyes and released his mana towards the chest to begin the ritual, but something didn't make sense. It's natural to know things because he was born into this world, but it was deeper than that. He knew everything even before he was born. It must be a memory from his past life. Veil reminisced about his past. He was a plain old overworked office worker that's only pastime is a game he'd been hooked on for nearly 10 years. It was Fantasy Farm's story, the world he lived in now. It was a world of swords and magic where one could go on adventures, but the main appeal was life on the farm. It was a peaceful life, different from his reality. He remembered all the events in the game, including the ceremony he was partaking in. Now that his memory's back, he knew exactly which item he needed. It is way more valuable than any divine sword, the dragon-hilted blade. He opened the chest and shouted in joy when he got exactly what he wanted. Hearing the curious murmurs of the others, he decided to show off his sword, expecting everyone to go wild about how good it is. But he was met by their laughter at his plain-looking sword. At that moment, a hand grabbed Veil's shoulder and asked him to step aside. It was Dirk, Veil's cousin. He had a mocking smile on his face as he praised Veil's sword, and like any other cliché manga, his cousin was bestowed the Divine Sword, the sword his father wanted him to receive. After the ceremony, Veil's father formally recognized Dirk as his son and berated Veil for humiliating him and kicked him out of their house. They might see the sword he pulled as pathetic now, but he was determined to prove them wrong. He'd leave the family's future to Dirk, and as for him, he'd live for himself. He's going to be a farmer starting today. Veil went to the town of Reem and believed he'd be fine as long as he had his sword. It was shaped like the Dragonwood Saber. Plus, it boosts crop growth speed and strengthens the leaves and fruits, making them pest-resistant. It was the perfect tool to power up his farming skills. The game allows its players to enjoy the farming life and at the same time, take on quests, and explore dungeons to slay monsters. It was a super chill game and full of freedom. Veil headed for a special place and arrived at the entrance of a dungeon, the perfect spot to get his farming on. He explored the dungeon until he was hit with a dead end. What he was seeking for should be behind that wall. As he was about to draw his sword, he heard a woman screaming. She was being chased by a giant boar-type monster. Seeing the direness of the situation, he jumped in and stabbed his sword to the ground. The boar that was charging at them just seconds ago was soon blinded by plants, sealing its movements, and with Veil's encouragement, the woman swung her sword to finish off the monster. She dashed and took down the boar in a single blow. After cheering for her victory, she stumbled due to exerting herself too much, but was thankfully caught by Veil just in time. The woman apologized and Veil asked if she was alright. She held her hands up, trying to convince Veil that she was fine. Eventually, Veil was able to convince her into taking a break, and she finally collapsed out of exhaustion. Veil wondered what to do since he couldn't just leave her passed out there because the dungeon still had plenty of dangerous monsters roaming around. Veil wrapped her in a cloth and stabbed his sword on the ground, summoning woodmen. Finally, a wooden stick-like doll emerged. They're familiars summoned by the Dragonwood Saber, and leveling them up depends on how tough the game gets. After summoning a few more of them, he decided to give them names since having too many of them felt a bit tricky. He first ordered them to carry the gear and monster that they defeated. Though the woodmen had no combat ability, they were useful for tasks that require heavy lifting. It might also be because the Dragonwood Saber isn't really built for fighting either. He walked back towards the dead end and inspected the wall to find a magic circle. Veil entered, carrying the woman and followed by the woodman. He can't believe that he's actually walking through these landscapes now, and he's only been able to stare at them for so long. At the end of the hidden route lies an underground lake. One can't even see the magic circle he saw earlier unless they were carrying the Dragonwood Saber. That was why it was one of the rarest spots in the game, and with that rarity come a bunch of insane rewards. Veil placed the unconscious woman down and instructed the woodmen that they were building a home at that place. Then he walked over to the lake and stabbed his sword on the ground. Only this underground lake is surrounded by rocky mineral veins unique to this space. Thanks to that, raw magic energy seeps into the water. If the lake water was drank, it will restore all the lost mana of the drinker. This whole underground lake was basically one giant bottle of holy water. Veil took out a seed and began the construction of the home he was planning to build. Meanwhile, the unconscious woman finally woke up and was shocked to witness a tree that was growing at an incredibly fast pace. Veil's attention was caught when the woman screamed after getting binded by the tree's roots. He quickly helped her out and apologized, but the woman apologized instead for making him rescue her. She asked where they were, and when she found out they were still in the dungeon, she was surprised to find out there was such a beautiful place inside it. Noticing the still growing tree, the woman asked about it. Veil explained that it was a Widley, a high-speed growth type. It wasn't a normal tree sapling, but a creation born from the sword's power, the Dragonwood Saber's ultimate feature. It can regenerate seeds of fruits and vegetables said to exist only in the heavens. The woman found it fascinating. Well, it was to be expected since it was a super rare seed that can normally only be harvested in dangerous areas. She asked the point of growing this tree, and Veil explained that he planned to harvest the lumber and build a tree house. Veil trimmed the branches of the tree and thought of using the wood to make simple furniture. To show gratitude for saving her, the woman offered to help him. Though Veil refused, she still insisted on helping. But Veil assured her that it was fine since he had the woodman as well. Finally, the construction of his treehouse commenced. The woman curled in a corner and watched them, wishing there was something she could do. They finished the treehouse faster than expected, and when they saw the inside, Veil thought it was better than he imagined. They still needed a bunch of stuff, but it was good enough to sleep in for now. The sunlight was nice too. They won't even need lamps during the day. Veil thanked the woodman and gave them some break time. Once he was left alone, he plopped down on his bed. He still had a lot he wanted to do, but they'll get there little by little since they'd got all the time in the world. Veil ended up sleeping, and when he finally got up to look out the window, it was already nighttime. He ended up resting too long and left the woman waiting. He looked down and noticed the area was glowing. When he went down to check, he found her, along with the woodman, making dinner. She couldn't help with the heavy lifting, so she thought of showing her gratitude in another way. She bowed deeply to show respect and thanked Veil again for saving her earlier. She finally introduced herself as Martina and claimed to be decent at cooking. Veil panicked after realizing he forgot to introduce himself and quickly shook her hand after telling her his name, leaving out his family name to not make things complicated. After their introduction, they had dinner together. Tasting the meat in the dish, Veil realized it was from the boar-type monster earlier. Martina shoved more food in Veil's mouth, thanking him for letting her land the final blow since it was a valuable experience as an adventurer. Veil asked if she was in a party, and when she answered no, he concluded that she must be just starting out. Martina was shocked and thought he was sharp, but she was just easy to read due to her honest reactions. She asked Veil's reason for being there and was dumbfounded when she learned that he was there to farm. She was confused as to how that was possible because they were in a dungeon. Veil explained that the tree and the woodmen were all summoned using the power of the Dragonwood Saber. But it was not just the tree, this land was perfect for growing things. Martina found this incredible and began packing since she stayed longer than she intended. Veil asked her to stay over since it was dangerous out at night. Martina thanked him while he instructed the woodman to keep watch. Veil led Martina to the room they built and was about to leave when she stopped him and asked where he was going. After hearing that he was going to sleep outside, Martina insisted on sleeping outside in his stead. This was his new home, so he should be sleeping in it first. When Veil tried to decline again, Martina pushed him down on the bed and convinced him to sleep there despite Veil's protests. Eventually, she was able to force him to sleep in it and ended up sleeping next to him out of exhaustion while he thought of the countless things he needed to do tomorrow. The following day, Veil woke up and found Martina kneeling on the floor. She felt bad about falling asleep leaning on Veil, but he assured her that he understood her situation because she was tired. Martina grabbed Veil's arm, asking if he had a cramp and if he wanted a massage. After Veil convinced her that it was fine, she invited Veil to eat the breakfast she prepared together. After their meal, they looked for an area to grow crops for a stable and slow life. Once again, Veil stabbed his sword on the ground and plants began crawling out. After determining that the soil was fine, Veil used his sword to summon a seed. Martina asked what kind of seeds they were, and Veil answered that they were called flame tomatoes. They're vegetables that enhance fire magic abilities. Starting with ability-enhancing crops, there are material crops and other magical plants. These serve as ingredients to replenish magic or to craft magical tools. Veil thought of the many more types of crops he could grow before instructing the woodman to help with the watering. The woodman plus Martina agreed to the task given to them. Veil looked at her confusedly and she just laughed, saying she felt like trying it too. They all worked hard together. Veil and the woodmen would collect buckets of water from the lake while Martina helped with planting. Both of them beamed with happiness when they noticed a sprout that grew in the blink of an eye. At this rate, they can probably harvest by the afternoon. So Veil thought of expanding the field a bit more starting tomorrow. Martina observed the grown seeds, excited about the harvest. She wanted to try cooking as well. Now that Veil thought about it, Martina was good at cooking, so he wondered why she became an adventurer. Martina claimed that she read the autobiography of an adventurer. That adventurer searched for ingredients across the world, cooked them himself, and ate them. He led such a self-sufficient life while also helping others. She aspired to live the same way, and Veil cheered her on her dream. Veil watched Martina, thinking about the kind of person she is. Before sleeping the night before, he remembered the main characters of the game, and Martina wasn't one of them. Though the world they're in is certainly a game world, Veil decided to leave things to fate. After a while, the fast-growing seed finally bore its fruits. Martina was amazed by the amount of progress in such a short time. She plucked some fruits for them to taste, and they sure were tasty. The benefits of the underground lake were amazing, but Veil was worried since he made too many at once. Martina recommended selling them in town since many adventurers treasure vegetables like this. Veil thought about it. He was thinking of going to scout for daily necessities and wholesalers anyway. If he was interested in wholesalers, Martina advised heading to the town called Dorison. There was an exceptional item shop there, and she'll definitely vouch for the delicious vegetables he grew. And so they decided to go, with Martina claiming to be the guide. As they were about to ask the woodman to carry the luggage, they all picked up all sorts of things to act as if they were busy with something. Me when my mom asks me to do something and I'm too lazy. Veil suggested going with just the two of them when a woodman suddenly tapped Martina. They had this stupid look on their faces as if telling her to enjoy their time together. Martina waved her hand and explained it wasn't a date. If you look closely, you can see me smiling with the woodman at the back. We ship it. They both loaded their backpacks full of flame tomatoes. Before departing, Veil asked what kind of item shop they were visiting, and Martina replied it was the largest item shop in Dorison town, the Ramar Company's store. Veil was surprised to hear about the store because even though there are strict conditions, securing an exclusive contract for crops ensures financial stability. Even he relied on it during gameplay. It was invaluable. The company's leader, Gregory Ramar, known as the Great Merchant, single-handedly raised the company to its current status and is renowned as one of the most competent characters in the game. If they could secure wholesale, it'd be great, but it'll be tough since they had no connections. In the middle of their journey, they encountered a girl on the ground who seemed to be a mage. They approached her and Martina asked what was wrong. The mage's magic power had run out, and there was a group of monsters rampaging on the outskirts of town. Her comrades had asked her to buy magic replenishing items, but she could barely walk anymore. After thinking of what they could do, Veil offered their crops, the flame tomatoes, so she could replenish her magic. After one bite of the tomato, the mage's magic was replenished rapidly. She complimented the tomato's taste, which the two were glad to hear. Veil then suggested bringing some to her comrades, so she immediately led them to where they were. Once they arrived, they saw that her comrades were fighting with a bunch of wolf-type monsters. One of the wolves turned to Veil and Martina and growled, attempting to attack. But before it could do anything, the mage raised her staff and burned the monster. Veil thanked her, while she was in a daze looking at her hand, thinking of the immense power she just displayed. Her comrades approached them. A mage with a bob hair complained about her being too slow, while the one in pigtails asked about the power she just showed since she wasn't normally like that. The mage pointed towards the two and explained that they gave her magic replenishing ingredients. Veil placed their backpacks down and offered the others his flame tomatoes. Just one tomato was enough to give them so much strength. They once again faced the monsters after fully recovering their magic. They all raised their staff in unison and unleashed their maximum power. A huge flame engulfed the monsters, burning them all. Veil was happy that the vegetables he grew could be eaten and even be of use. The mage thanked the two since they were only able to defeat the monsters thanks to them. Veil was just glad he could be of help and bid goodbye. However, the mage stopped them since they hadn't received payment for the tomatoes yet. Although Veil told her not to worry about it, she still insisted on paying and handed him a pouch full of gold coins. The two were surprised at the amount of money, but the mage insisted it was a fair price considering the tomatoes' effect. What's more, she bought the remaining tomatoes as well. As they walk back home, Martina expresses her happiness for selling out before even reaching the town. What happened earlier somehow gave Veil a little confidence. He promised he'll work hard to grow vegetables good enough to supply to the guild next time. Martina looked at him fondly and promised to help out as much as she can. For now, they decided to focus on shopping since they made a lot of money. Meanwhile, the mage from earlier entered a store, wanting to buy some healing potions. However, she stepped back when she heard someone being scolded for not taking proper care of the tomatoes he was selling. That someone was Gregory Raymar, the owner of the item shop. She commended on his strict personality, and Gregory just stubbornly stated that they couldn't display subpar goods there. Though that won't help expand the variety of vegetables, there was nothing he could do about it, especially since there weren't any good farmers around recently. He then wondered if she needed any magic replenishing potions today, but she had already bought some amazing tomatoes a moment ago. She talked about their amazing effects, quickly replenishing one's magic and even boosting one's power. Thanks to it, she was able to defeat monsters in no time. Gregory asked to see the said tomatoes and the mage handed him one. Gregory inspected them and found them excellent. Back to Veil and Martina, who finally arrived at the lively town of Dorison. Merchants, in particular, visit this town often because it's located between the major cities of the east and west and serves as a relay point. That's why there are so many inns and eateries. Martina recommended enjoyable things to do, from strolling down Central Street to sampling food from the stalls. But for now, they decided to go shopping for necessities. Veil wanted to buy fabrics like bed sheets and window glass. They originally planned to stop by the Raymar Merchant Guild, but since they'd completely sold out of tomatoes, Martina suggested going to the furniture shop instead. She knew of a large store that even offers a wagon rental service if they buy in bulk. They checked out the store Martina talked about and had everything they needed. They went to the bed section as Martina blabbed about the corner where they can try out all kinds of pillows and mats. It was like a large furniture store from Veil's previous life. Veil debated what to choose between the pillows displayed in the shelf, but he soon opted for the cheapest one. However, Martina complained about him compromising and encouraged him to choose another one for a better quality of sleep. She dragged him to the corner where they could try things out so they could find something that suits Veil. Veil tried so many of the pillows he thought were comfortable that he was starting to not know which one was best. They laid down on a king-size bed where the two of them fit. Veil thought that maybe he should have gotten a bigger bed too, causing Martina to abruptly get up and blush about the thought of sleeping together. But Veil quickly dismissed it by saying his bed size was adequate since he'll be sleeping alone. After countless testing, they finally narrowed down the pillow options to 2. Veil decided to close his eyes and decide. He leaned on a pillow and thought it might be just right and asked Martina to try it too. With a shaking voice, Martina claimed the pillow he was leaning on wasn't exactly a pillow. Veil opened his eyes and realized that he was leaning on Martina's bazooka instead. He immediately backed up and apologized, though Martina apologized for being confusing as well. Filled with embarrassment, they both grabbed whatever pillow they could get their hands on and decided to buy those. Then, they continued shopping for the other necessities they needed. It was already nighttime when they got back, and they were surprised to see that new crops were bearing fruit and a fence was installed, making it look even more like a farm now. It was beyond what Veil expected, so he thanked the woodmen for their hard work. They even prepared the other rooms and furniture. They're so proud of themselves. Meanwhile, one of the woodmen approached Martina and asked how their date went, but she claimed it wasn't like that at all. I doubt they believe her though. The harvest will be tomorrow after sunrise, but Veil would like to taste the paprika first before taking them to the Raymar Merchant Guild. Since they were at it, Martina thought of cooking them for dinner too, which he excitedly agreed with. While she prepared their dinner, Veil decided to organize the items they bought in town and asked 2 of the woodmen to help him. Veil was in deep thought while pulling the cart. Selling the tomatoes this time was lucky, and the money they got from it has almost run out just with today's shopping. He hoped that their crops would sell at the Merchant Guild next time, and if they were lucky, they may be able to secure a stable trade agreement. He was brought back to reality when a woodman tugged on his sleeves and pointed above the lake. Veil looked up to follow the woodman's finger, and there he saw a girl falling on the lake. Veil took out his sword and stabbed it on the ground, summoning plants to become a cushion and catch the girl. Hearing about the commotion, Martina approached Veil, asking what was wrong. She was surprised to see an unconscious girl, which Veil explained to be someone who fell through a hole in the ceiling. She was alright but seemed to be unconscious, so Veil took her to the room the woodman made while they were gone. Martina just hoped she was okay and was not dangerous. Veil watched the girl's sleeping form and wondered about her identity. She must be a mage judging from her belongings and attire. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and met his gaze. He asked the girl if she was alright, but the girl glared at him and questioned his identity. She grabbed her staff and interrogated him. Veil tried to calm her down, explaining that he runs a farm inside this dungeon and he just caught her when she fell by making plants grow and turning them into a cushion using the power of his sword. However, the girl became even more suspicious and thought he was spouting nonsense. She wore her robe and decided to just leave. Veil tried to stop her since it's dangerous late at night and that she should rest a bit more first, but the girl just shouted at him to not touch her. Veil apologized and let go of her, causing her to slip, but was thankfully caught by Veil. Now she's complaining about Veil letting go of her hand when she was the one who told him to let go. At that moment, Martina peeked inside the room, looking concerned, and asked whether they became friends and offered the vegetable marinade she made. She offered a fork to the girl, but her hand was rudely slapped, causing the fork to fall on the floor. Martina glared at her for wasting food and not even considering the feelings of the person who made it, but the girl just told her to get out of the way. Veil still tried to convince the girl to stay the night since carnivorous plants become more active at night, making it dangerous, but the girl still insisted on leaving. Martina could not take her rude attitude anymore and confronted her, but the girl dismissed her and pushed the two of them, telling them to just casually play at farming together before storming out. They could only sigh and wonder about her purpose for rushing off like that and entering the forest late at night. She didn't seem like she was in the right mind either. Seeing Veil's kindness, Martina suggested going into the forest to look for her since she's worried about leaving her like this. Also, it'd be such a waste if she didn't try the vegetables she made. And so they set off to the forest, leaving the woodman to organize the supplies and guard the house. Meanwhile, the girl wandered around the forest with concern. She was running out of time and she couldn't find it at all. She heard a noise behind her and saw a carnivorous plant. It would be troublesome if she was found out, so she had to get away from there. However, a certain herb caught her eye. It was a lanlo, the one she had been looking for. She stopped the carnivorous plant's movement using magic and unleashed an attack. However, it did not work and the carnivorous plant captured her using its roots. She was about to get eaten when it got bound by the plant's Veil grew using his sword. Martina helped the girl up, and when asked why they were there, she claimed they ended up coming because they couldn't just leave her alone. Veil reminded them that they needed to escape quickly, but the girl couldn't because the medicinal herbs she'd been looking for were right next to the carnivorous plant. If that was the case, they needed to defeat it first, but their attacks aren't working at all. Veil explained that physical attacks and magic damage doesn't work on that carnivorous plant. Instead, if they pull both its roots at the same time, it would stop its movement. Veil ran to the opposite side to act as a decoy while the two girls pulled out its roots, causing the carnivorous plant's movement to be stopped and wilted. They could finally take the lanalo, however, the tremor from earlier ruined the herb. Veil inspected the ruined herb and found a seed. The girl thought the seed was pointless because it takes nearly a month for the herb to bloom. Veil and Martina glanced at each other knowingly. They might be able to do something about it. The girl could not believe she was back in the underground lake again. She even wondered if Martina really hated her, but she can't blame her. As they walked, Veil asked her why she needed the medicinal herb. Apparently, she needed it to make a new magic potion for an assignment at the academy. The academy, that was in the game too. If Veil remembered it right, it was the Royal Minist Academy. The girl's assignment was due in a week, and she was worried that she might not make it in time anymore. That was why she was in a hurry. But a week is more than enough for Veil to grow the seed. Though the girl does not believe it'll be ready in time, Veil assured her that they'll finish it in 3 days. It was not impossible as long as he had the power of the Dragonwood Saber. He pushed the seed inside the hole just above the handle of the sword and summoned a bunch of lanalo seeds. The single seed had multiplied. By absorbing the seeds of vegetables and plants, he could now reproduce those seeds using magic plants. It was a simple yet incredibly useful ability. With this, the variety of crops they can grow will increase. They began planting the seeds, and within just a few minutes, the seeds started to sprout. At this rate, the herb should bloom by tomorrow noon. It was like magic, but it was the power of the Dragonwood Saber, a weapon specialized for agriculture. No, it was more like an item. The girl laughed and agreed. If he had fought with his sword, he'd probably snap in an instant. Veil watched her warmly. He thought it was nice that she can laugh naturally now. She claimed to be natural from the start, but she was actually a bit tsundere at first. Now that she thought about it, he really was using the sword for farming. She embarrassedly twirled her hair as she thanked him for helping her despite the danger, and also for growing the herbs she needed. She bowed and also apologized for doubting him. Veil just gave her a smile and assured her that he was not bothered by it, so it was okay. Their conversation was interrupted when Martina, who was wearing a cute checkered apron, called them for dinner. She prepared all sorts of dishes using their freshly harvested vegetables. Martina called to get the girl's attention and bowed to apologize for her harshness earlier. She must have been feeling anxious, and yet she was so insensitive. The girl wondered why Martina was apologizing when she was obviously the one at fault. Even after they helped her, she said such terrible things and even treated the vegetables carelessly. Seeing her so down, Martina handed her a fork of the vegetable and asked the girl to try it this time as a sign of reconciliation. She really wanted to make up with Martina, but she finds the squishy texture of tomatoes gross, and she didn't get the bitterness of bell peppers at all. She seemed to really dislike them. Martina still tried convincing her to try just one bite, and when she did, she was surprised by how delicious it was. It was totally different from the tomatoes she's had before, and her mana is increasing. It was a flame tomato, and the other one's a thunder bell pepper. All of them were grown in that field just now. She could not believe it. These vegetables are so rare, and there are barely any successful cases of growing them. But Veil claimed he did not do anything. It was all thanks to Dragonwood Saber and the dungeon's power that the ingredients grew this delicious. The taste being twice as good is also thanks to Martina's master chef skills. The girl who was listening started to tremble and shed tears. She didn't know what to say. They had put their heart and soul into growing these vegetables and even spent time cooking for her. The two assured her that the crops grow quickly by infusing magic, and the marinade was just massaged and soaked for about 10 minutes, so it was not much trouble. She could not understand them though. She believed they should be more proud of it since they did something amazing. But the two just found her cute, at Sundeer Witch with a warm heart. The next day, they enjoyed a meal with the newly harvested ice pumpkin, a crop that increases ice magic. Veil was worried about how things would go yesterday, but Martina and the girl, Chiara, seemed to have gotten along well. After their meal, they filled their cart with the crops they harvested to sell them to the town of Dorison. Before they could leave, Chiara suggested passing through the upper forest to get to the town would be faster. Veil went there for the first time yesterday. She asked how he even found this place, and he simply answered that it was through the dungeon. After all, he couldn't bring up the game. Martina was worried if they could pass through without getting lost since it seemed like a dense forest. Chiara had a smug look on her face and told them to leave the navigation to her. That being said, the human entry point was on the uppermost floor, but they had a cart. Veil told her not to worry and asked them both to get on the cart. Once they were inside, he stabbed his sword on the ground and a huge plant pushed the cart up. After reaching the uppermost floor, Chiara led the way. It wasn't long until they reached the Dorison town and Raymar's item shop. It was finally happening. Veil held a basket of his crops as he nervously walked inside. Chiara noticed his nervousness and questioned where his enthusiasm from earlier had gone. Veil was sweating profusely as he tried to convince her that he was starting to calm down bit by bit, though it doesn't look convincing with how much he was sweating. Martina assured him that Gregory was a good person, so there was no need to worry. Veil wondered if she had met Gregory before, and when he learned that she did, he felt somewhat assured. Their conversation was interrupted when a man came up to them. It was Gregory, asking if they needed something from him. Veil looked at him nervously. He found Gregory intimidating and completely different from the image he had of him. He doesn't have the courage to talk to someone like this. While Veil and Chiara turned silent due to Gregory's overwhelming presence, Martina cheerfully greeted him. Gregory, who seemed fond of Martina, asked her about her first dungeon. It was quite the unusual combination. Martina's first dungeon was quite the tough experience for her as they were attacked by monsters. Gregory worriedly asked if she was alright, which Martina replied that she was, thanks to Veil who saved her. Gregory turned to Veil and praised him for doing well. He seemed to be a good person. Gregory noticed the vegetables in Veil's basket. This was his chance. He told Gregory about his recent farming and that he came to Dorison to have him try the produce he's grown. But there was no need for tasting. Gregory already knew the taste of the flame tomato. One of the magicians Veil saved let him try it. He was amazed by its taste and magical effect. Veil felt hopeful and asked if Gregory would consider stocking it at his store. Gregory wanted to say yes, but magical replenishment vegetables have exceptional effects but lack sweetness or moisture, making them dry and unappetizing. It's widely recognized how awful they taste, and they rarely get picked up. Furthermore, adventurers and knights are constantly leaving this town, so the customer base isn't large, and the demand for such products is low. He doesn't intend to stock products with no sales potential. After all, business relies on buyers. It was a harsh world. However, Veil thought it'd be a waste to give up now. It was true that there might only be demand from adventurers, but he was confident that regular customers would also enjoy eating it. He bowed, asking Gregory for a chance. Seeing someone so young be this gutsy, Gregory decided to give him a test. Veil must sell all the vegetables he brought today within 3 hours. However, each vegetable must be sold at 500 yen, and discounts are not allowed. Chiara found the challenge quite unreasonable because 500 yen was double the price of these vegetables. Even Martina thought Veil should reconsider, but the determined Veil still took on the test. It doesn't seem to be going well though. It's already been an hour, but they still haven't sold a single one. Chiara complained about him accepting such an impossible task, to think that they wouldn't sell at all. He didn't think they'd be completely ignored like this either. Martina tried to stop them from fighting because they're just drawing bad attention. As if on cue, two adventurers passed by and Martina advertised their vegetables that were perfect for magical replenishment. But the black-haired adventurer knew they weren't tasty, and after seeing the price they left. They were too expensive, and they could just buy them cheaper in the market. Just like Gregory said, it seems like the bad reputation of magical vegetables were deeply ingrained. They'll need a different approach. Martina thought of something and grabbed Chiara to help her. They put on these cute aprons and called for everyone's attention. They held a tasting event for their freshly harvested vegetables. As the two cooked the vegetables, the passersby's attention was caught. Once the food was done, they quickly had a taste and were amazed by the flame tomato's sweetness. At that moment, the mage from yesterday requested to try the ice pumpkin. Seeing the new crops, thunder peppers and ice pumpkins, she decided to buy some of them too. Veil was worried his vegetables wouldn't sell at all, so he appreciated her buying. She thought it was a waste and bought more of each. She took a cup to taste and advertised them loudly so other people could hear. Thanks to the mages, quite a few adventurers bought from them, but they were still far from selling out. Maybe they shouldn't have brought so many. The adventurers could only carry so much after all, and the general crowd wouldn't buy as soon as they saw the price. They were pricier than regular tomatoes, and they probably didn't need magical replenishment either. They worked harder to attract more customers when Veil noticed a fatigued-looking man. He took a cup of their vegetables and approached him. The man was extremely exhausted. He hasn't been able to rest at all, and lunch breaks don't help with this kind of fatigue. Veil understood. He was the same back in his previous life after all. He offered him the cup of vegetables, and the man shed tears after tasting it. It's been a while since he ate such delicious vegetables, and he somehow felt less tired too. There weren't just magical replenishment effects, but it also helps with fatigue recovery. It must be because of the underground lake's blessings. The man, who now had a better complexion, bought some vegetables, and the people watching quickly came over to buy some as well. With this, they were able to sell out. They came back to Gregory's shop to inform him of their success, but it seemed Gregory was watching them secretly, so he knew about it already. He thought adventurers would be the main buyers, but it seems even the general crowd loved them. Veil passed his test, so he'll have his vegetables stock at his store. After finalizing the contract, they went home and had a luxurious dinner. He can now live his life as a farmer with peace of mind. Starting tomorrow, he'll prepare vegetables for shipment and also think about the treehouse. He ended up spitting his coffee out after being startled by Chiara's voice. The girls were bathing with the new large bathhouse Veil made on the first floor, but their conversations about their bazooka echo everywhere. Typical girl conversations, I guess. Veil may have to make the bathhouse soundproof. Inside the bathhouse, the girls talked about how nice the place is, surrounded by nature, and there were even delicious foods. Blushing, Chiara asked if she could stay, which Martina thought was a great idea, but the decision was up to Veil. She actually wanted to stay too, but she couldn't gather the courage to ask. But if they do it together, she might be more confident. They thought of asking Veil together, but he already heard their conversation and expressed his desire to continue living together. They agreed, though of course, that Sundeer Chiara got shy and threw a bucket at him. In just a few days, Chiara and Martina's rooms became more personalized thanks to the wooden and adding more furniture. Chiara showed off the curtain she bought for everyone and the cute cooking utensils she found. Girls really love this kind of stuff. Hearing Veil's comment, Chiara complained about his room being way too plain. Veil thought he'd live a lonely life as a farmer, but he ended up living a cheerful life with Martina, Chiara, and the woodman. Now that he thought about it, he's worried about Chiara being away from school, since it might affect her studies. She assured him it's not a problem since she'll still be a student, but her status would be that of a research student. Even if she didn't attend classes, she can still earn the credits needed to graduate as long as she turns in her assignments. Normally, someone her age wouldn't become a research student, making her a special exception. Martina had no problem living there since she's an adventurer, but she's worried about Chiara's family. Chiara once again assured them that there was no problem because both her mom and dad were pretty hands-off, or rather they would just tell her to do whatever she wants, especially her mom, who was super busy, so it can't be helped. The curious Martina asked what her mother does and found out she was a magic researcher. She conducts magic research at Chiara's academy, and she's known as one of the world's leading researchers. Hearing about her description, Veil could only think of one character, Seraphine Fontaine-Meyer. Chiara was surprised that Veil knew of her mother, but it was to be expected since she was famous. In the game, Seraphine plays a support role like Gregory by trading crops to useful items. He had no idea she had a daughter, more so married. Veil wondered if the reason Chiara was panicking about the assignment was because she wanted to show it to her mom. That was the case. Her report on Lanlo was already done, and it's due tomorrow, but she was worried if it's good enough. Even after they assured her not to worry since she worked hard on it ever since she got there, she still continued to be concerned. That's why Veil suggested he and Martina go with her if she was that worried. Martina assured her that she can rely on them when she's in trouble, and Veil said some exaggerated things about going to the ends of the earth to save her. Chihara bursts out laughing. She finds his exaggeration funny. Still, she was thankful to both of them. They planned the things they needed for tomorrow, and the next day, they finally reached the Kingdom of Kren's Royal Minist Academy. Chihara seemed extremely nervous, so Veil tried to calm her down. Thankfully, Chihara finally relaxed a little and thanked them before going inside alone. After bidding her good luck, the two decided to look around the academy while waiting. They admired the magical research facilities and its details. Veil was so moved that he can go on a pilgrimage to the holy sites of Fantasy Farm Story. Even the garden was incredibly beautiful. Martina has always wanted to see it close someday, but she never imagined for it to come true like this. She's been to the capital before because of her father's work, and she's only ever seen the academy from a distance. Veil wondered what kind of work her father does, and Martina answered he was similar to a merchant. He thought Martina might also be dealing with some complicated family issues, but he wasn't really in a position to talk about others. It seems everyone's going through their own struggles. As if on cue, Dirk noticed Veil. What great timing! Dirk sneered and thought he was dead after getting kicked out. When asked what his business in the academy was, Veil answered he was there as an escort and had a job now. But Dirk questioned if there was even a job out there that someone like him could handle. Veil noted he wasn't struggling and even had fun every day, but Dirk just laughed and mocked him. Veil talked about selling vegetables and even signing an exclusive contract with the Raymar Merchant Guild. Dirk could not believe it and swung his sword towards Veil, but Veil easily blocked his attack and warned him not to act like this in the academy. Dirk clicked his tongue and said some nonsensical BS before leaving. Bro thought he did something. Veil and Martina sat on a bench in the garden. She couldn't help but complain about Dirk's disrespectful behavior. Veil explained they were stepbrothers. They had some history between them. Even so, he ended up getting worked up and apologized for worrying Martina. She tried to say something else, but he assured her it was fine. He was no longer bothered by it anymore. After a while, Chihara cheerfully approached them and ended up tripping. Martina asked about her report, which she was thankfully able to submit. She was so excited to talk about her mom praising her that she rushed over. After finding out she got help from them, who run the farm in the dungeon, her mom said she'd love to meet them and invited them to the research building. They walked through the building's stairs, comparing everyone there to Veil, who had the same look on his face when working. Finally, they reached a fancy door, and inside was her mother, apologizing for the mess. Veil was in awe. She looked exactly like the character from the game. There was no doubt about it. This person was Seraphine. Seraphine introduced herself and greeted them. She felt deeply indebted to them because it was their efforts that made the completion of the report possible. The two denied and claimed they only provided the herbs, but the analysis and research were all thanks to Chihara's hard work. The usually loud Chihara was blushing after being praised. Seraphine glanced at her and chuckled. No wonder she heard Chihara say such things. Apparently, after submitting a report, Chihara came to her and asked for permission to live together. She was so happy to see such a passionate attitude from her for the first time. So she asked them to take care of her daughter from now on, which they happily agreed to. Seraphine rummaged through her drawer and offered seeds of a rare plant if Veil was interested. It was the seed of an Auron. It was one of the most overpowered crops, no creatures in the game. It has tremendous magic power that allows it to control life at will. However, on the flip side, cultivating it and obtaining the seeds are both extremely difficult and high-level tasks. But there should be no problem for him since he had Dragonwood Saber and the underground lake, but he wondered if it really was okay to receive such a precious item. Seraphine just laughed and said it was a reward because she had confidence in him. She's judged that he was the one who can raise it, so she's entrusting it to him. Veil was glad to be trusted and agreed to raise it. Seraphine winked at him and said some confusing things. Veil did not understand and asked what she meant, but she dismissed it as hoping he gets along well with her daughter. Veil was still clueless, and Chihara, who seemed to have gotten the meaning of her words, told her to stop saying strange things. Back in the underground lake, Veil added more fencing around the farm. They're a monster-repelling fence that they got from the Raymar Merchant Guild. They set it up at the dungeon entrance and the barrier grass. They even have the woodmen for security while they're away. They had one more thing to do, and it's to make a separate field for Auron. While planting, Chihara thought Seraphine must have really liked Veil because she even recommended him to transfer schools. Veil just awkwardly laughed, but Martina was worried whether refusing really was a great decision since he would have been able to achieve excellent results considering his abilities. But Veil was fine with it. He liked working on the farm and his stepbrother, Dirk, was there. so school life would be a bit hard. Chiara was surprised because as far as she knew, Dirk's family is one of the most powerful noble families on the continent, the Knight family. Veil had no choice but to explain the situation. They felt sorry for what happened, but Veil was glad that he got the dragon tree sword. He was fulfilled with his current life and felt thankful to the both of them for staying with him. Chiara was getting bothered by the sappy atmosphere and suggested they continue making the farm great together. After planting Alran, they were excited to see its fruits. Normally, it'd take a year for them to grow, so it may be a while before they get to see them. Even with the lake, Veil still couldn't predict how long it'll take to grow. They just had to watch over it patiently. The next morning, Veil woke up feeling unnaturally heady. It was not muscle pain, but it felt like someone was on him. He wondered if it was the woodmen, but when he opened his eyes, he was greeted by a naked girl, asking to play together. Veil shouted in surprise, and the girl just kept asking questions in confusion. Veil sat up and tried to get her off him, asking about her identity. The girl frowned and claimed he was the one who raised her. She must be Elran. Now that he thought about it, the design was indeed like this. In the game, she had IE wrapped around her body and wasn't completely naked. But this design was a trend on social media at the time. Veil wrapped her up in his blanket because it might get them in trouble if anyone sees her like that, so she had to wear something first. The door suddenly opened and Martina and Chiara entered the room to call Veil for breakfast. However, what they saw inside was Veil with a barely clothed girl. It didn't help that the blanket Veil put on her slipped down. The two turned around to leave with a traumatized expression. Veil tried to explain that everything was a misunderstanding, but the girl started calling him Dad, which caused more confusion. Martina especially could not believe Veil had a daughter at his age. Veil questioned why the girl was calling him Dad, but she reasoned that he raised her from a seed, so that makes him her dad. Finally, Chiara got it. She was Alran, the one they planted yesterday. She grew up so fast. Too fast, actually. After everything was settled down, they had their breakfast. Alran's body was now covered in ivy as she ate. Martina boasted that the vegetables they were eating were all grown by Veil, her so-called dad. Hearing about the farm, Alran asked them to leave the management to her since plants are like her friends. Veil forgot because of the commotion, but that was right. She can control the power of plants. Then she asked whether Martina and Chiara were Veil's wives, which they were quick to deny. Veil introduced them as his friends whom he lives together with and asked her to stop calling her dad because he wasn't even married nor had a partner. Alran finally agreed to call him by his name and pointed out that he had Martina and Chiara even if he didn't have a partner. Chiara pinched her cheeks and told her to stop saying unnecessary things. She was teary-eyed after Chiara let go and clung to Martina, saying it would be her if she wanted to pick a mother. Martina tried to imagine them as family, but soon blushed and claimed it was too early for her. Soon, they wondered what to call Alran since Alran was the name of the plant. Veil suggested Hanan as her name, which she seemed to like. Now that the name has been decided, he has some things to do, like buying clothes for her. They arrived at the Dorison town with Hanan dressed in clothes instead of Heidi. Chiara pointed out that Martina and Hanan were wearing matching clothes, so they looked like a parent and a child. It looked kinda baggy on Hanan though. Veil wondered if he should have borrowed clothes from Chiara instead. Chiara suddenly turned to him with a glare and seemed to have sensed Veil thinking something mean about her just now, though Veil was quick to deny it. They went to the Ramar Merchant Guild and the receptionist, Jennifer, greeted them. Veil handed her the vegetables and asked about Gregory, but it seems he's currently attending a client. Jennifer noticed Hanan and went crazy for her cuteness. Hanan trembled, looking scared. Poor Hanan, hiding behind her dad. Veil asked Jennifer to calm down and she apologized. She just gets excited when she sees cute things. They went upstairs to the second floor to look for clothes for Hanan. Since she didn't have any particulars, she'd have to do lots of fashion shows. Hanan came out wearing a cute dress, but Jennifer insisted on making her try more. There were so many that Hanan couldn't choose, so she asked for Martina and Chiara's help to decide. But the two were also carrying a bunch of dresses for her to try. They made her try on simple clothes, like a top and shorts, paired with boots, and a cute dress with a frilly skirt. They still weren't finished though, and wanted to make her try on more clothes. Hanan finally had enough and hugged Veil, hiding behind him. They wondered what happened, and Hanan was replenishing her energy, since Veil had a warm aura, which felt good and relaxing. Seeing the two look confused, Hanan grabbed their hands to feel Veil's warmth. The two blushed and thought that was enough. Seeing them so lively, he decided to leave the rest to the girls. Suddenly, he heard Gregory's voice from downstairs and decided to head to the first floor to ask what had happened. Gregory sighed. It was an awkward situation. He was going to apply for a quest and invited Veil to come on. However, Veil worried if he would be of help since neither him nor his sword had fighting abilities. But Gregory's intuition was telling him that Veil's sword might be useful. In that case, Veil agreed to tag along. While walking to the guild, he asked about the quest's difficulty and was shocked to know it was an S-rank quest. They arrived at the Adventurers Guild. Veil was amazed as he looked around. It was just like how it was in the original story. While they were looking around, a man called out to them. Veil seemed excited and blurted out the man's name, Felix. Gregory asked whether he knew of Felix already. He's the guild master of this town after all, so it was expected that he'd know even if they hadn't met in person. Felix Ordner, the guild master of Dorison, and also one of those helpful characters. Felix already knew why Gregory looked for him. It was about the dragon hunt. He assured Gregory to rest easy since he's already gathered several skilled adventurers. Gregory wanted to add Veil to the team, but Veil believed that there was no way he could do that. Felix glanced back at the adventurers and back at Veil. He's not sure a boy like him could handle it, but Gregory advised not to underestimate him. He believed Veil was a promising boy and might be the key to solving this problem. If someone is perceptive as Gregory says so, Felix had no choice but to have him come along as well. Veil was worried though. He wondered if there really was anything he could do. He raised his hand to get Felix's attention and asked for information about the target. According to the information they gathered, the dragon in question has settled in the forest path heading north from there. That path is one of the key routes connecting Dorison with a major town. But no one would want to pass through a road where a dragon was lying in wait. On top of that, there are even rumors of people being attacked nearby. The dragon's cause was still unclear. Gregory pointed to the map and added that the alternative routes are quite a detour, greatly increasing travel time. At this rate, the number of merchants doing business in Dorison will steadily decrease. In other words, the town's economy will start to stagnate. Veil could not ignore this either. Veil thought about it. This is a game where one enjoys a slow life, but the word dragon does exist, and they do appear before players. However, rather than being targets for subjugation, their role was more like quest givers. Players would grow and deliver crops requested by dragons who lived across the world and could converse with humans. There are 5 types of dragons that appear, so there is a possibility that the dragon this time is also trying to make a request. Veil suggested trying to persuade the dragon first before defeating it, since there are friendly dragons who understand their language as well. However, they won't know unless they meet the dragon in person. So whether they defeat or not, they should at least meet face to face first. Felix agreed to the idea and asked Veil to come to the guild again tomorrow, and he'll guide him to the dragon. Meanwhile, Gregory invited Veil back to the merchant guild to prepare some items for dealing with the dragon. The next morning, Veil packed his bag and tried to quietly leave before everyone woke up. However, Chiara just walked out of her room yawning. Veil was surprised to see her up early today, but it was because she used up a lot of energy yesterday, so she went to bed early. Hanan seemed to be the most tired though. Chiara noticed his big luggage and asked if he was going somewhere. Veil fidgeted and made up an excuse, saying it's for some errands, and quickly ran away. Chiara just watched him leave, when Martina suddenly peeked with a frying pan in hand and commented about Veil's suspicious behavior. They suspected that he might be hiding something and wondered if he met a girl. Hanan, who just woke up, sensed something interesting was happening, so she suggested following Veil. Once Veil arrived at the guild, they prepared to set out to meet the dragon. He's worried that he rushed out in such a hurry, but it was too dangerous to bring the girls along to the subjugation, especially since the dragons are seen as ferocious and violent creatures. He looked around the team. There were more people now. Felix wasn't complaining since it's nice to have more firepower, but something was strange. According to their information, the dragon's location should be around where they are, but they couldn't find it right away. Gregory noticed Veil looking around and asked what the matter was. Veil remembered this area. It was the area that's unlocked after clearing the event in Fantasy Farm Story. In the game, it was a treasure hunt event where they could find all sorts of items, but this time it was to find the dragon to earn a special reward from Felix. Veil watched the adventurers blindly rush in the forest, but he decided not to do the same. First, he had to observe his surroundings. He wondered if this was the same as the in-game event, when Hanan suddenly popped from the side, asking if he had noticed something. Veil was startled to see Hanan, along with Chiara and Martina. Martina apologized for following him after getting curious, and Chiara commented about the subjugation. Veil didn't say anything because it might be dangerous, so he apologized for making them worry. Hanan threw a tantrum about Veil keeping it to himself. He asked if Hanan knew about dragons, and she explained that her knowledge had been passed down through generations. Unlike humans, they don't have the luxury of slowly growing up over time. To quickly learn how to survive, they inherit the knowledge and experiences of their predecessors. Hanan glanced at the ground Veil was looking at earlier. She noticed how the trees and grasses had fallen in an unnatural way. Veil wasn't sure if it was a dragon, but it's as if something huge was lying there. Hanan thought of a place where a massive body could have been hiding and used her ability to control plants to open up an area. Once they got closer, they discovered a treasure chest. Chihara opened the chest and found an ultra-rare herb inside. It was in the exact same spot as in the game. They looked for the remaining hidden spots in the forest, and all they discovered were treasure chests. To no luck, the dragon wasn't anywhere to be found. Martina wondered if it flew away, but there were no signs that a huge body had taken off. If it's a dragon's characteristics, Veil could think of another one. He called everyone's attention to check the last place that came to his mind. They came to a place with a huge tree. Hanan looked up and noticed a presence. She asked Veil for confirmation, and he confirmed that it was indeed a dragon. Chihara looked around, trying to find the dragon, and Hanan teased her about her twin mountains shrinking if she got too worked up. No, they're not even a mountain. They're like oranges at this point. Chihara glared at her and pinched her cheeks for teasing her. After hearing their noise, a girl peeked from behind a tree trunk. Though she looked human, she had horns, ears, and a tail of a dragon's. Chihara was surprised and ended up shouting, startling the dragon and causing her to run away. Hanan sighed and teased Chihara for making the dragon run away, to which Chihara replied that it was her first time seeing such a species, so it was not her fault. While chasing after the dragon, Ortina asked to confirm if the girl had both dragon and human traits, which Veil confirmed. She was a dragonkin, a rare species that can transform into a human form while still being a dragon. Martina found it surprising that dragons can take the same form as them. In this world, dragons are symbols of power and awe, with such immense influence that some countries even deify them. But Veil wondered why a dragon like her was there. The group kept looking for her and decided to split up to find her faster. The dragon hid in the bushes, trembling and wondering why they were chasing after her. There were even so many people carrying weapons today. Humans really are scary. She needed to get away before they found her. She crawled through the ground, trying to escape, when she suddenly saw two adventurers talking about finding her and using their weapon to deal with her. She squealed in fear, causing to get noticed by them. They're coming in her direction. She needed to run, but her legs wouldn't move. At that moment, a hand grabbed her shoulder. It was Veil, motioning for her to stay quiet. He promised not to scare her and offered his hand, saying he'd listen to her story once they moved away from there. She took his hand, and they reached where the three girls were. The dragon gasped and stepped back, but Veil assured her that they wouldn't harm her. Martina and Chihara even apologized for startling her and shouting loudly. The crying dragon was confused, but soon realized that they weren't approaching her with bad intentions. She wobbled and collapsed on the ground, seeming exhausted. Veil handed her water and told her to try drinking it. After drinking the water, her complexion looked better. It tasted different from regular water since it came from a lake that produces holy water. It's been so long since she's had water that was this tasty. However, she soon frowned again. Veil asked her what was wrong, but she shouted for them to stay away. She hadn't eaten anything for a while, so her strength was completely gone. Martina placed her bag down and began taking out lunch boxes. It was her time to shine. She prepared plenty of lunch and even tried making the onigiri that Veil taught her. When she insisted on bringing lunch, Chihara wasn't sure how it would turn out, but she didn't expect it to be useful in this way. Martina believed lunch was important since they wouldn't be able to muster any energy when they're hungry. She handed a plate to Veil, and he began feeding the dragon. He handed her the plate, and she finished it in a flash. Martina gave her more food, and she gratefully accepted it. Chihara, who was watching, was amazed by the dragon's appetite. Veil handed her another plate, and she swallowed it, including the plate, without thinking. After their meal, Hanan asked her if she was a water dragon since she seemed able to distinguish the quality of water. The girl answered in affirmation. She is Simone, the water dragon. Veil also introduced himself and his three companions. Water dragons are supposed to live near bodies of water, so he asked what she was doing in the depths of this forest. Apparently, the spring Simone lived in dried up, so she's been searching for a new home. Water dragons like her couldn't fully use their powers unless they're near a clean spring. That was why she was resting here in the forest to recover, but she was too hungry to move and ended up being spotted, causing all this commotion. She's scared of what's going to happen to her. They'll surely capture her alive and do terrible things. Veil assured her that it'll be alright. Since he's acquainted with the adventurers and their leader, he'll explain the situation himself. He also asked if she could stay in her human form, as he was planning to introduce her as part of his group. Simone cried even harder, thanking them. He heard most dragons have bold personalities, but Simone seemed to be the exact opposite. The girls held her hands as they walked back to where the others were, assuring her that everything will be alright. Once they arrived, Veil immediately called out to Gregory. He turned to them and noticed the girls who joined before they even noticed. Veil looked around, and it seems the other adventurers have also gathered nearby. He wanted to talk about the dragon sighting to Gregory, but Gregory cut him off, saying they figured out what the rumors were about and that they're about to hunt it down. Hearing his words, Simone cried in fear. Suddenly, they felt the ground rumble and a giant serpent popped out of the ground. Felix pointed to it and informed Veil that it was them. It seems the giant serpent was mistaken for a dragon. They had to take down this monster, but the other adventurers who came unprepared for battle and only seemed to join for the excitement of seeing a dragon, trembled in fear. Out of panic, an archer aimed for the serpent, but with such a half-hearted attack, it would not penetrate its skin. The serpent growled. It must have thought that they were provoking it. One of the adventurers collapsed out of fear, and the girls, led by Chiara, stood in front. Hanan used her abilities to grow plants, and Chiara unleashed a magic attack, but it doesn't seem to be doing much damage. Fighting here was dangerous. It was too narrow and crowded with people. If it releases poison, everyone might fall in danger. Veil inserted a seed inside his sword and hit the serpent to get its attention. Now that it's focused on him, he ran away so the serpent would follow him, acting as a bait alone. Simone followed behind along with Gregory, who gathered the adventurers that can move to provide backup for Veil. Veil lured the giant serpent into an open area and stabbed his sword to grow plants that raised him up on a branch. The serpent followed him up, but Veil jumped back down, letting the plants he grew to bind the serpent on the branch. After landing on the ground, he planned on aiming for its head and finishing it off. However, the serpent broke free and dashed to attack Veil. Just as the serpent was about to reach him, Simone popped out from behind the tree and kicked the serpent's head. One foot wasn't enough. She kicked the head again with her other foot until the serpent collapsed on the ground. She soon flinched when she realized everyone was staring at her. Veil approached Simone and thanked her for helping him. Simone beamed. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to use her powers in this form, but she was glad it worked out somehow. Veil wondered how powerful she'd be if not in her restrained form. Felix announced that the giant serpent was successfully killed, and Veil tried to explain that dragons do exist. Simone, the one who helped them slay the serpent, was one. Everyone was shocked, even Gregory. Simone explained that she didn't attack and was too hungry to walk, so she was resting. Seeing the cold stares of the adventurers, she hid behind Veil in fear. However, her fear soon vanished when an adventurer praised her for being cool and thanked her for helping his friends. It seems everyone's acknowledging her, surrounding her and showering her with praises. Once they were back to the guild, everyone held a celebration for their victory against the giant serpent. The adventurers drank together, and Simone watched them curiously. It was her first time mingling with humans, so she asked all sorts of questions about their weapons, their dance, everything that caught her attention. She was like a child experiencing the world for the first time. Martina, who was sitting next to Veil, asked whether he's used to these types of situations. It was his first time coming to this kind of place, but he's attended formal dinner parties before. Their conversation was interrupted when Gregory approached Veil, thanking him for his hard work and wondering if it was okay for the star of the day to be sitting in a corner like that. Veil asked if he had done anything to be as honorable as being the star, and Gregory wondered what he was saying. He saved the future of this country. Veil waved his hand in embarrassment, but Gregory just sighed. Was he really unaware of this? Besides, it's not just the town he saved, but also Simone, who was in trouble in the forest. The reason they were able to talk to everyone with a smile was undoubtedly because of him. In that case, Veil decided to go say hello to that table with Gregory. They were greeted by a drunk Felix, talking about the huge banquet that will be taking place the day after tomorrow. It was a banquet held every 6 months. Gregory scratched the back of his head and explained that it wasn't the banquet, but the morning market that's the main attraction of the event. It was like a festival. There weren't just shops, but also more street vendors than usual. He encouraged Veil to try putting up his own stall as well, since it would be a great opportunity. When Veil agreed, Gregory told him he'd let Jennifer take care of the application process and he could just ask for the details when he comes tomorrow. After that, Gregory called Martina to ask her something, while the others talked about holding a strategy meeting after going home. They invited Simone to come with them, and although Simone wanted to go, she needed to find a new place to live in. Chiara and Hanan informed her that there was such a place with clean water and enough space for a water dragon to live in, and it won't be a problem even if she lived there. They both turned to Veil, and he invited Simone to come with them because he wanted to show her someplace. It was already nighttime when they arrived at the underground lake. Veil informed her that the water she drank earlier was fetched from here. Simone had changed her residence several times, but she's never come across such a beautiful place. She was determined as she turned to Veil to ask permission to stay. But before she could even ask about it, Veil already agreed. He knew she wanted to live in this lake. It was so obvious that anybody would have known. Simone asked if it really was okay for her to stay, and Veil assured her that it was. With tears in her eyes, she thanked Veil. Since she seemed tired, Hanan encouraged her to take a dip in the lake and relax. Simone began untying her dress and Chiara covered Veil's eyes with her staff in panic. She sighed at the thought that no one had objections with Simone stripping in front of everyone. Simone happily submerged herself in the lake and didn't come up even after a few minutes. The others increasingly became worried and thought about the worst possible scenarios. A water dragon couldn't have possibly drowned, right? It isn't helping that Hanan kept talking about the possibility of a giant underwater monster. They found it odd that she still hadn't swam up, so Veil entered the lake to call for her. That's it for today. What do you think will happen to Simone? Did she drown or evolve? Stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a good day.